All right. So, so once upon a time, there was a shepherd, and he went to shepherding school, and he got all the credentials, he got all the certificates for this new fun way of shepherding sheep. It was called sheer success, and this shepherd was so excited. He graduated, took all of his credentials and his certificates, and got his first herd, and and he knew he was gonna make a big difference in the world of shepherding. So he started from the western slopes of Colorado, and he needed to make his way all the way to Denver. And he was just so excited. He even did a team kickoff with the herd. Had them excited, got some agreements on how they're going to work. Did a couple trainings on what sheer success really looks like and the benefits of what it brings. And then they started on their way. And a few days into their trip, the sheep started asking, where are we going? And the shepherd, responded as a good sheer success enthusiast would, and says, we don't worry too much about timelines and roadmaps. We really just want to see where we go. We're going to let the process unfold as they go. And the sheep are like, okay, cool. You obviously know what you're talking about. You've got all those certificates and those letters after your name. So we'll trust you. So they keep going, and every time they stop to eat dinner, the shepherd notices that the sheep are eating grass from other pastures, not the pasture that the shepherd said that this is where they're going to eat. They committed to eating from this pasture. So the shepherd kind of got angry with them and said, "You guys aren't following sheer success at all. We eat from this pasture. This is the one that we committed to." So she'd be like, okay, yeah, I get it, buddy. And they start eating from the pasture, and then they continue going, and as they're going up and over the Rockies, the sheep kind of notice there's a smoother path, so they start kind of veering that way, and the shepherd sees them and says, no, we're not going to go that way. Sheer success is we need to choose our destination, and we're going to go towards it, and then we'll reflect when we get to the top of the mountain. And the sheep are, getting a little impatient now, and they decide they're going to continue following this guy, but they're not sure how successful this sheer success thing is going to be. So they continue on the way. A couple more days go, and a sheep falls into a well, and this is the last straw for the shepherd. The shepherd blows up at the entire herd. He comes and yells at the sheep that fell into the well. He says, I gave you all this documentation on, how not to fall into the well, why falling into the well is such a bad idea. I can't believe this. He pops the sheep out of the well, and then the rest of the sheep, they're upset. They're tired of it. Half the sheep decide to sit down. They're not going anywhere else. The other half of the sheep decide to find their own path. They have a good idea of where they're going, and they leave the shepherd alone. And as the shepherd is sitting there sulking, thinking about, how if they just knew what sheer success could bring to them, if they would only just follow his direction, we'd be so much better off. And everything that they're doing is, obviously woolly fall. It's not a good approach to getting to the other side of the state. And an old man walks by and sees a shepherd and says, "Hey, are you a shepherd?" And the guy responds, "Yes." He says, "Well, where's your flock?" And the shepherd just goes off on him. He's like, "Oh, they're not listening to me. They want to eat other grass. They keep asking where we're going. They keep falling into wells." And the old man listens and nods and asks, "Have you listened to your flock?" And the shepherd said, "Yes, of course. Yeah, every morning we talk about where we're going and what we're going to do today, and then we even have every so often a meeting where we just talk about what's working, and I even bring up race cars and sailboats and give them all these fun imagery to describe what they want to do." And the old man pauses and he says, "Hey, are you listening to them? Have you listened to your sheep?" the shepherd kind of shakes his head, rolls his eyes. He's like, yeah, I don't know what you're saying. And then the shepherd goes to sleep, wakes up the next morning with a little bit of a different attitude, goes to his remaining sheep and asks, how can I help? We need to get to Denver. What can we do differently? What's been going on? And the sheep said, you keep telling us all about this sheer success thing, and we keep telling you all these other ways that we can get across to the other side. You told us we couldn't know where we were going, but we just want to be able to set our expectations. And you kept telling us not to eat the other grass, but we found that this other grass is more nutritious. It was better for us. And you told us not to go, the other way, but we know we've done this before. We know that going up and over that mountain is going to tear our hooves apart. So we wanted to go the other way, and you just wouldn't listen. And the shepherd, takes a big breath and just sits down and says, okay, well, we're going to try it differently. And you guys kind of help lead the way. And they finally make it to Denver, and he doesn't lose any more sheep, and they enjoy a nice beer at the Great Divide Brewery. That is an example of an allegory, which is why we're here. It's a meetup about Agile, and we're here to talk about how can we work with others that don't really understand Agile, and how do we do so in a way that it's really heard, and that people will want to follow us. So we're going to jump into some allegories. My name is Patrick. I'm an Agile coach at a company called ArtNet. And I've worked as a Scrum Master and for a few years, and I've grown to really love the foundations of Agile, and I've seen a lot of the pitfalls of Agile becoming dogmatic in some ways, and people stopping immediately listening when I even bring up the word Agile. I get that eye roll where it's like, oh, here we go again. Here's this Agile thing. So tonight the intention is to kind of explore different ways of bringing a message to people. And I think of allegories. I think of analogies as a wonderful way of explaining kind of where we're coming from, that kind of breaks down some barriers. So I'm going to share a quick little presentation. I'm going to set the stage for what are allegories, why would we use allegories, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms. And we're going to be in breakout rooms of about 3 people. We're going to give you about 10 minutes, and you're going to run through, you're going to create your own allegory based off the Agile Manifesto, the 4 values and the 12 principles of the Agile Manifesto. So, any questions before I start presenting? All right. Cool. So, I like to think of the Agile Manifesto as its own allegory in a lot of different ways. The cool thing about the Agile Manifesto is what I love the most about it is that it was created by a group of guys that came together and decided to peel away all of their differences in how they were achieving a lot of their results to find that core of what was making them successful. So they came up with this Agile Manifesto, which is a collection of values and principles, and I'm sure we're very experienced Agilists here, so we know that. And I'd like to offer a different way of engaging with that. So we'll start out with allegory. What is an allegory? So an allegory is it's a story or a poem or a picture that can be interpreted to reveal hidden meaning. usually a controversial one, a moral or a political one. Generally, it's using some symbolism and metaphor. I have a picture here of Wall-E. Is some cool fan art that I found. And Wall-E is kind of an allegory about how, if we continue to, cause a lot of waste and continue on a path of not caring for our world or ourselves, bad things happen. So that's kind of a more recent allegory, but I want to open it up to a few people. What are some other allegories that y'all are familiar with? Have you engaged with allegory in the past? And you're welcome to, I can't see hands or anything, so you're welcome to just start shouting out at random.
Well, I mentioned one before the meetup started, Plato's Allegory of the Cave.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's the allegory of the cave about?
Oh,
In a very, very short snippet.
Yeah, the life we're like, so imagine, I don't know, it's not a very pleasant allegory, right? That our life is just a reflection of what the real life is, maybe is the pleasant way to say it. They're around a fire and they can just see the reflections on the wall and they think that's what life is the reflections on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
I have one. What about the allegory of the two like the angel and the devil on on your shoulders when you're trying to make a decision?
Sure. Yeah, that's a wonderful metaphor for sure.
How about the book Animal Farm?
Oh, that's a beautiful representation of allegory. Yeah, Orwell does a great job of writing allegories.
Tortoise and the hare.
Yes, exactly. Yes, the tortoise and the hare. That's one of the more simple ones. That's age old. Anybody can understand it. Yeah, that's a beautiful one as well.
I think all of Aesop's fables pretty much are allegories. The whole collection. The fox and the grapes, and I can't think of any other ones, but the tortoise and the hare, all those ones.
Yeah. So allegory's been around for quite some time. It's a very effective means of communicating a moral, telling your point. Let me push forward. So we'll pick apart. So what are some elements of allegory? Symbolism and metaphor are central to an allegory. Essentially, an allegory is just an extended metaphor. It's a metaphor that is a narrative, right? And generally every piece of the narrative, the story that you're telling, has some sort of representative symbol. So it always tries to illustrate a point. And what's beautiful about allegory and what makes it effective is you can talk until you're blue in the face about what the right thing to do is, or you shouldn't do this, or you shouldn't do that. And that, I don't know, that makes me stop listening when somebody's kind of preaching at me. But if there's a way that somebody can weave in an analogy or a masterfully crafted metaphor and tell me it through story, I'll find my own connections in that. And it's not as there's not as much of a barrier that gets brought up. And so I think about why does that matter in Agile? What's the point? Why do I need to know about allegory? Why should I try to create these allegories to be able to share why Agile is a good way to go? And it really comes down to this idea of capturing hearts before being able to capture minds. I've experienced when I've tried to throw the Scrum guide at somebody and that not going over well. But trying to tell from my experience, a testimony of, how things have gone in the past and why doing it a different way might have had a different result. That usually helps. So it helps break down those barriers and makes people a little less defensive. So that's kind of why I think we should use allegory. So we're gonna pick apart the Agile Manifesto, and we're gonna create our own allegories from each of the values and principles. We're not gonna do one for every single one because there's not enough people here, and that would just take a long time. But we're gonna go into breakout rooms, and you're gonna choose one of the values and principles within your group to come up with your own allegory. So I'll just do a quick refresher on what the Agile Manifesto is. So these are the values. This is a wonderfully up-to-date screenshot of the wonderfully up-to-date website from 2001. And this shows us the first 4 values, the foundation of what Agile is. So we have, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. A lot of times, this is where people stop in this on this page, but there's also a little bit of fruit in looking at this final sentence. It says, while there's value on the right, we value the items on the left more. And I think that can be some ways where people tend to become a little bit more dogmatic and don't capture the hearts or the minds of people who they're trying to teach. So we want to kind of think through these values. And then we have the Agile Principles, and I don't want to read through them all just because that might bore you. And I know you're all itching and wanting to get into writing your own allegories, but I'm going to leave these up on the screen just for a moment and allow you to kind of refresh your own memory. Are there any that are sticking out to you that might have a clear metaphor available?
Maybe the build projects around motivated individuals, give them the environment and support they need and trust to get the job done. Are you looking for more?
Yeah, I mean, what are you kind of seeing from that? Like, what kind of metaphor do you envision as you look at that?
Oh no, never. Well, now that I'm like playing it out in my head, I feel like it wasn't. I don't know. I was thinking about ants, but maybe that feels degrading or something. I don't know.
The cool thing about allegories also is that they're animals and insects and whatever it is.
So ants are super efficient, but we have to give them the right, like they have these built-in tools and paths and things, right? And then they're left to let be and just be efficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that developing in some way for sure. Like a micromanaging ant lord trying to get them to do different things.
Yeah, I don't think they have managers, right? They just are all very motivated and they have processes and support and they get the job done. Yeah,
I like it. Anybody else seeing any others? I'll go to the next one.
So, I was going to say that the changing requirements late, I see a beaver building a dam and there's a flood and the river gets bigger and, they have to make changes.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, I like it. What about on these ones here? Any of these standing out? I love the simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. Yeah, I always think of the Karate Kid for some reason with that one.
Tell us more about the Karate Kid, Patrick.
Yeah, so I think where my mind goes with the simplicity, the art of maximizing the amount of work not done. I think about like Mr. Miyagi, and he's just teaching some of the basics, right? And he doesn't go into a lot of the different techniques that are, could be distracting. He just wax on, wax off, and he just keeps it at that. And it's super simple. And he doesn't have to add more and more and more onto that. And that's how, he starts to develop the foundations, right? But maybe that's not an allegory. So we can dissect that too, if anybody wants to extend that.
I'd also be curious, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but I feel like, Nicole, you always have really cool things to say. And I'd be curious if you have something at the top of your mind. If not, that's okay too.
No pressure.
I'm not feeling very creative right now.
Sorry. No.
What about the emperor has no clothes as working software as the primary measure of progress?
Oh, very interesting. What are your thoughts on that one?
Well, it's kind of like it may not completely line up, but just a little bit that, oh yeah, we're like, there's a project plan, we're 50%, you can't see it, but it's there. We're going to get a little bit of, no, really, we have some software, doesn't do anything yet, can't click on anything, can't see it. I don't know if it completely aligns, but.
Yeah, I love that. No, that's great. So, all right, cool. So I think we're primed enough. We might be able to get some creative juices going. So what are we going to do now? So we're going to jump into breakout rooms. We're going to do about 3 people per room, and we're going to give you 10 minutes. 10 minutes to think, get your creative hats on, think through a really good metaphor, or a really good allegory. Choose your favorite value or principle, and go from there. If you want to do multiple, that's cool too. If your group is like super like in the flow. So we're going to come back together after 10 minutes, and then we're just going to share out what were the allegories that we created, what were the allegories that or what were the challenges with creating an allegory, some of the lessons that we might not have, or connections we might not have made initially. But before we jump into that, and as we get the breakout room set up, here's just a few some idea starters that I was thinking of as I was thinking through the different allegories and the different the principles. So I've got the never-ending story, the boss who wanted praise, process landia, the land of forgotten features, trust and other lies we tell, the speedboat of change, and the wolf called scope creep, and scope lawyer and associates. These are just a few ideas that I had with the different values and principles and things that we could develop into different metaphors. So that's where we're going to go in the next 10 or so minutes. Any questions before we do that? I'm going to stop sharing. All right, cool. Are we ready for breakout rooms?
I have it queued up. I'm going to do 5 breakout rooms. So that should put at least, at minimum 3 people in a room. I'm doing assign automatically. Forgive me in advance, guys, because I don't use Zoom every day. So hopefully just by pushing this create button, you guys will end up in a room magically. See you in a bit, guys. The breakout room sessions, by the way, are not recorded. So when you return back to the big room, it will be recording again.
Cool. So what happens in breakout rooms stays in breakout rooms.
Guess so. Yep.
All right.
There you go. Are you guys getting prompts? I just want to know.
No, I think there's another, but yep.
Oh,
now
here we
we're
go.
on.
Yeah, now we
There it
are.
goes.
Checking.
All right, see ya.
I want to take this as a opportunity for a little bio break. Hi, Linda. We are in breakout rooms. I can see if I can try and add you to one. Let me assign you to room 5. Is that okay? Linda, did you want to join one of the breakout rooms? Let's see. Participants. Mhm. All right, you guys just decided to leave early? Oh, but you're on mute, I guess.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, we just, I guess we were all done with just about a minute or so left. So,
Oh, that's good.
yeah.
Are you in Boulder? Where are you at?
I live in Littleton, so I went to school in Boulder. But yeah, so I'm not, yeah, I'm like an hour away, but I just decided to join y'all's group. So thanks for having me.
Well, that's the virtue of doing things virtually.
Yeah.
We've as SIG leaders have been talking about that, how it's just really nice that we have been able to broaden our networks with
Mhm.
seeing what everybody else is doing.
Mhm.
And we would normally not be able to go to some of these meetups.
Mhm.
Logistically, getting through rush hour traffic, getting to some of these.
Yeah, so true. Yeah. And
All right.
you're in Boulder, obviously.
Yeah, I'm in Broomfield now.
Oh yeah, that's great. You said
But I did live in Boulder for several years, and I worked with Anne on the FEMA project in
Okay.
Fort Collins. So I was driving to Fort Collins and or busing. So
Was that before the pandemic when like you
Yeah.
guys have to be there physically? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm going to close out all the rooms. We're going to get a whole bunch of company here soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, not an allegory, but I think it's funny. I wish pets lived longer and life wasn't so expensive and cake didn't make you fat and people weren't idiots. That's my allegory from Facebook.
That just got recorded, Nicole.
I mean, it's all true. I would say it out loud. Like
It's
I did.
awesome. It's that funny reality of being kicked out of your virtual breakout room and you don't realize you're in the other room yet.
Yeah, it's jarring for sure. Yeah, you don't know whether like say goodbye or if they heard you say goodbye. It's always a little awkward. but that's how I do it at parties too. All right, cool. So what did we get? How did that go? A show of thumbs, up, down, sideways.
We still have, it still seems like, is everybody here? Because I still see people's hanging out here in their rooms.
They might be. Well, we had 15 when we went into the rooms, and then we have 15 now. So I think maybe everybody's here.
Okay. All right.
Cool. So, so what were some of the fun ideas that we got out of our breakout rooms? Anybody want to feel free to share?
I can share ours, I guess.
Sure. Thank you.
I don't know that it was amazing, but so we came up with the last Agile Dodo that we we took kind of the welcoming changing requirements even late in development, and looked up kind of what happened with the dodo. But the dodo actually was a bird that was slightly larger than a turkey that lived on an island in the Indian Ocean, and they had no natural predators and all the food that they could ever need. And so there was no need to change until humans came. And so our allegory story idea was that there was one smart dodo who realized that its environment was changing, and all of a sudden they were becoming the source of food and they were losing their environment. And so it worked with some other business stakeholders to learn how to fly. And so there's one dodo that remains out there somewhere that was able to fly away. I don't know, but that's kind of where we went with it. So
I love that. I also love that you can clap in Zoom. So I'm going to do that both physically and virtually. That's good. The last Agile Dodo. Who else? What other ones did we find?
Well, I'll go next. We talked about the game of telephone to dovetail with the value that is face-to-face communication is the way to solve problems when you're in a development group, because when you don't actually meet face-to-face and talk out the problems, you can cause miscommunication and problems. So what we did is we came up with an allegory of farm animals, that there was an animal who really wanted to build a tree house. And so he's like standing here with, some tools and some wood, and he's trying to recruit help. So every animal that comes by the path, he asks them if they would help. And he goes, oh yeah. And the first one was a duck, and the duck says, okay, yeah, sure. I'll let me go talk to the chicken, and the chicken we'll get the chicken to help. And then another animal comes along, and that animal goes and talks to another one. And before you know it, there are like 5 or 6, 7, 8, team members, all these different animals going to talk to different other additional animals to get them to come and help build the treehouse. Well, then at the very end, all the animals come back, and they have a selection of a list that they want to go and buy ice cream, because the ice cream truck is coming down the street. And instead of and the other the donkey, the one who started everything, he says, well, wait a minute, here are my boards and here's my hammer. We were going to build a tree house. And everybody thought, well, no, we're actually going to go get ice cream. So that's kind of the allegory of all these different of communicating face to face is better than doing any kind of telephone or social media that is not or Zoom or anything that is not face to face. And what brought this is that because so many of us are working virtually now, and we can actually truly communicate across time zones, et cetera. But a few years ago, that was really hard. And to actually get development teams together, if they were across time zones in different countries, sometimes the communication would cause a lot of problems.
I'm gonna clap, because that was my group. I'm still gonna clap for it. I'm gonna go there. So yeah, that was a beautiful conversation that we had. A good illustration. Who else?
Allie, you're going to have to help on this because it looks like we lost Jeff to his other meeting he had to go to, and he was the one taking all the notes. So between the two of us, I think hopefully we remember our story. So we settled on the individual and interactions over processes and tools. And our story is about a herd of cows that really, really wanted to find themselves a great pasture, and they were going to build this fantastic fence around their pasture, and it was going to be theirs, and this was going to be their new home. So they all decided that, well, the best thing to do is be split up and get some stuff done. And they made a long list of all the things that they had to do. They were going to have to figure out where they're going to get wood, where they're going to, what kind of, where's this land going to be? Who's going to design the fence? Do they need to get permission from utilities? Who's going to buy it? Do they have to get lawyers involved? All this stuff that they had to do. So they went off and they started doing it. So there was one group of cows that started heading out to go take a look at wood. And they heard bamboo's great, it grows really fast. Another one was like, yeah, but oak is really strong, we should look at some oak. And another was like, maple's gorgeous, let's look at. So they were going back and forth, figuring out what wood to make it of. And every time they did, they were going through the forest to go visit the wood shop. Ellie, you want to tell about those who are trying to find the land? You're on mute.
Thank you. So there's all these cows and they're going back and forth through the forest and going back and forth to the wood store. And then there's some other cows that have, they needed to find just the right land. They don't want to find lands that's too hard to put the fence posts in. So first they did a bunch of research on shovels, and eventually they got the right shovels. And then they started going around to the land on the farm and digging holes to find the right place to put their fence. Because they, what's really important is that it's easy to build this fence. So they keep digging all these holes to find good land for the fence. Meanwhile, the other cows are walking back and forth through the forest, and they're passing each other notes, trying to keep everybody up to date on what's going on. And
oh, but how are they passing those notes? They had the best idea. Here's the process.
They're writing notes on leaves that have fallen on the ground in their very careful cow handwriting. And they've developed a really great process to fold the leaves up into paper airplanes and like throw them into the forest so the other cows can know what's going on. But eventually they decide that, well, let's make a long story short. Eventually they realize that even though they can't see each other through the forest trees, they could just talk to each other. But they did. Well,
and then a crow flies over the herd, and by this time they've decided that what they really need, they can use the trees that are in the forest, but before they can actually do anything, they have to build themselves a sawmill. They're doing a lot of research on blades and everything. And then a crow flies over and says, hey guys, there's this really great land over here. It's got a fence already. There's a farmer who's coming out to fill up the trough full of water. You might want to just go over there, and maybe that can be your new home. So, end of story. They finally got someone to talk to them.
Oh, that's great. That's a very thorough analysis. You guys maximized all 10 minutes. That's great. You've got all sorts of different plots.
The story told itself.
Yeah, right. What I'm noticing about that is, like, I know you said it really hits the individuals and interactions over processes and tools, but I also see that, like, the comprehensive documentation hitting that one, contract negotiation, working software, and even the face-to-face communication. So that one can span all sorts. That's a very utilitarian allegory that you created. Awesome.
Help yourself anytime you need it.
For sure. That's kind of the hope with this, right? Is like, I want to share with everybody. I want everybody to share with each other. What kind of analogies that we've created? What ways do we think about communicating some of these to other people to help them understand? I think we've got two more that we can share. What other teams had some cool allegories?
So Annie and I chose the Agile principle that is Agile processes promote sustainable development. The sponsors, developers, and users should be able to maintain a constant pace indefinitely. So I initially kind of thought of a conveyor belt when I read that principle. So in my head, it's like maybe like clients are the one like grinding the gears that are creating like the demand for the product, and then like developers are like people on the line like screwing nuts and bolts like to this whatever like metaphorical product it is. And it's kind of an imperfect metaphor because it like a conveyor belt goes from point A to point B. It's kind of like maybe more similar to waterfall rather than Scrum, but like it's just kind of what initially came to my brain. But anywho, and so if like factory worker A like fails to like put like a nut and a bolt on the product, and it goes down to factory worker B, like can create this bottleneck and like issues like that. So am I missing? I know there's some other stuff I'm missing. Annie, can you help me out here? Okay, well.
Yeah.
There you go.
Some key concepts we talked about were constant communication, course correction, flexibility. We talked about things like the Canada geese, ants marching in a line, just some animals that we talked about. We didn't really have an animal story to share.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, allegories don't always have to be animals. But yeah, I like where your head's at. I like that you're thinking about all the different ways that, you know, we do communicate, or different ways that things move from, you know, point A to point B. I like the geese analogy because geese kind of like shift and then they follow each other, and they shift and they follow each other, and it's just like they're kind of going with the flow, and that's a really cool. And there's like really no leader goose. There's no like goose leader. It's just like they go as they need to. So that's fun. Nice. Well, thank you for that. I'll give you a little Zoom clap as well. Wonderful.
I think starlings would be a really interesting example, because they look chaotic, but they're creating beautiful things. They're kind of known for doing that. That would be kind of fun to play with.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, I didn't think is there just one more group? Are we at our last group? All right. What do we get with our last group?
I'm waiting to see if anybody's going to speak up or if I got nominated. So I think we were kind of thinking like, if you're kind of wanting to get a point across, sometimes that helps to start with a shared understanding. And so we went with kind of an existing allegory that we felt like most people already kind of knew. And so that maybe felt more comfortable and easier to follow. So we picked Goldilocks, and kind of, I don't know that we picked an exact like item on the list. I think probably individuals and interactions over tools and processes would be the one that probably fits the best, but kind of like experimenting and all bringing our different ideas and experiences and things that work best for us, but experimenting and trying them all out to find the one that's just right.
Yeah, that's great, because I think that also covers a ton of them, right? You said you didn't pick like one,
right?
But like, you know, working software and delivering quickly, like those are key to like the Goldilocks story, right? There wasn't comprehensive documentation as to like what the perfect chair is gonna be and building that. She just like sat in it, like, and sat in it and tried it out. So that's awesome.
Right. Yeah. We were also kind of thinking about how sometimes you have to build things for the customer to find out like, oh, that's not what we wanted. Right. And then you adjust it a little bit. It's like, oh, that's too hot. Nope. That's too cold. Just right.
Yeah. Yeah. Jeff's putting in the chat demos like that. That's what those are intended for. That's great. Yeah. And also totally fine to go, like, it's smart to go with that shared understanding. I made up an allegory at the beginning of this, and nobody knew where I was going with that. Half the time I didn't know where I was going with that, but I could have stayed with one that we all know, right? And that would have communicated just probably even better, right? And Kim even brought this up in our group, is like, yeah, starting with that and then making it your own. So I'm going to say that's a pro tip on Agile allegories, is take one that you know and kind of mold it and make it work for what you're trying to communicate. Awesome. Any last thoughts? So we're going to kind of close out, but any last thoughts on this exercise? Any like fun aha moments or any other analogies or metaphors that came up for you while you were doing this?
I think the cookie cutter was one. That's a metaphor. Just, you don't want something to be cookie cutter. Like when you're kicking off a new team, you can't assume that what worked for other teams is going to work for this brand new team. So that was one that came up. And then I just felt gratitude, Patrick. Like, there's a lot of discussion right now about storytelling, and everybody needs to be better storytellers. And I was sharing with Nicole and Katie that this I'm taking away. I've got homework. Like, I continue to want to be better on the spot at thinking about metaphors and allegories. So I really love that you brought this to the table. I think this is can be translated in so many different situations and be fun for dev teams, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've just really learned in my experience that telling a story is much better than telling a rule. So I think about all of the effective leaders that we've had throughout all of history, and all of them tell a story. They all pull from metaphor and symbolism. And that's what we are, like, here at an Agile meetup. We're all Agile leaders in some way. So I love it. You're also exploring storytelling, and I think it's a worthwhile venture, whether it's professionally or personally. Just being able to pull analogies is so effective and so important. All right.
When you're working with, you do work with teams all over the world. So this might also be helpful with making some of these things more relatable with different cultures.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was another thing that Kim brought up is, trying to choose an example that could be like internationally recognized. And Aesop's Fables is actually probably one of the ones that everybody understands, everybody knows to a certain degree. Like every culture probably has some story that tracks closely to an Aesop fable. So that's another really effective way of kind of communicating.
And you could probably mold these into a retrospective, right? So like thinking about the tortoise and the hare, there's several Agile principles that kind of line up with that one in terms of, continuous delivery of valuable software, having the sustainable development pace. You could probably retrospect and ask your team, where are we acting more like a tortoise and like running in bursts, and where are we acting more like a hare? And you could do that similarly with any other fable probably too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to build on what Jeff just said, I've seen teams before, they've created their own, whether it's metaphors or analogies or whatever, right? And just taking back to the tortoise and the hare or Goldilocks, like then you hear the team as they're like, walking around the hallways or working together, like, okay, how can we Goldilocks this? Right. And everyone knows what they mean because they already talked about it. Right.
Yeah.
How can we experiment? How can we test it out and get that, quick feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's about breaking down those barriers of defensiveness and allowing us to connect on something that feels less threatening. So that's a beautiful part of all of this. So thank you for going along on this journey with me. This is it's been fun. Thank you for sitting through my made up allegory at the beginning. I've written a couple others. I'm much better at writing than I am just speaking out loud. So you can always find me on LinkedIn or on Medium as well, with a little bit more coherent thought. But yeah, appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, I want to also second that. Patrick is a wonderful writer, so do please follow him on LinkedIn because he has a lot of wonderful things to share. I don't know how he finds the time to write such eloquent things, but he has a lot of wonderful things to share.
It was a fun exercise. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sherry, did you have any closing things while we wrap up?
Well, some obvious changes with a new person organizing, me, myself, and I. Again, thank you to Nancy and Katie for helping me out with the transition. They've been very wonderful. And a couple of other little changes. I am kind of borrowing that sign up sheet. I know that you guys haven't done that in the past. It's not required. It's very optional, but it's just a way to exchange information. I hope it's now working for you guys. Thank you for working through some of the technical issues. This was our first run, right? Trying to figure that out. There's opportunities to reach out to Agile Boulder. So you'll see that there's an email. We've got an Agile Boulder email specifically. So if you want to reach out to me, or you just want some information, the email is on the Mile High Agile SIG section on here on the sign up sheet. So there's ways to reach out. And I've also created a form for a Google form for if you are interested in being a speaker for Agile Boulder. I'm putting that on each of the events. It's available on the Mile High Agile website. So if you're interested, or if you want to forward along that link to somebody who you think would be a great speaker, please feel free. And in the sign up sheet itself, if there's anything that you're interested in that we're not thinking about, that we can, I'm so used to co-organizing, that I can bring to the community, please just write a little note on the sign up sheet. I'd like to learn more about XYZ. Or, if there's a particular subject or a book or something like that you'd like to bring to the community. So just any way that I can get some, collect some things that you guys are particularly interested in. So that's how I'll close it. Thank you so much for joining tonight and look forward to seeing you next month. I hope you can join next month for the Dare to Lead.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks,
and
Patrick.
reach out with all your fun stories that you tell your teams going forward.
Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.